Good afternoon, my peoples. How you doing today? This is your boy. You always say your man, your uncle, your daddy, your brother, your son, everybody. This your boy Bobby Hill with another episode of the Big Damn. I was here yesterday. Gave you a little bit. Decided to come back today, see what's going on. You know, like I said, I'm trying to, grinding, putting it in. Trying to be consistent about what I'm doing, even when it's hard, even when I don't want to do it, even when, it's hard. I actually don't want to do it, even when, some days feel more inspired than other days, still got to put it in. That's how you got to do. That's what I chose to do. And this is how we're going to do it. You know, like I said, I don't mind coming out, but man, I look forward to doing this. I look forward every day. I think about what I'm gonna talk about. Think about what I'm gonna you know present out here. And and I've deep thought about it. I write things down sometimes. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I freestyle. Yeah, sometimes I just go off the top of my head. You know, just things that I've built up throughout my life, and just want to bring them out. Just want to let you see things from my perspective. I ain't saying I'm always right. And I'm not saying that, but I know what I know. I seen what I seen. I heard what I heard. I read what I've read. So like I said, just give you my perspective on things. Very good time around here in San Antonio. Spurs won last night. Wemby was Wemby. I seen somebody with a license tag this morning that says Wemby. I think I'm gonna post it today. Let's see. Somebody have Wemby with two M's on there. They got look everybody. Every week there's somewhere else putting up a sign. Go Spurs, go. So, I mean, it's good around here to see them. They're trying to get back to the championship form, and it looks like things are looking up for them. They can get past one more victory, get past the Blazers. I think they play the winner of the Denver Minnesota series, I think, which is very interesting now because Minnesota, who I think they built the 3-1 lead, and they lost their alpha dog Anthony Edwards, I think, to a knee injury, and he'll be out for a few weeks. So it's there's gonna be a few games. I don't know. They got Nikolai Jokic, the Joker. We'll see what's going on. We'll see what he can do. See what kind of this your time. You the man. I've heard a lot of people, a lot of sports, you know, sportscasters, sports personalities. Everybody say how they think Joker's still the best player in the league because he put up mind-boggling stats all the time. But we'll see. It's moments like this that change that separate you. What you gonna do? Down 3-1. Their best player gone. What's up? What you gonna do? You won a ring before. Let's see. Or you a one hit wonder? Can you do it again? You know, a lot of one hit wonders out here right now. Everybody want a ring, and when people want a ring, ain't been back to it. Yeah. So we'll see. But I'm trying to hopefully San Antonio can get done. I mean the Spurs can get this next victory. I mean this next victory. Hopefully they want a long series. They want Denver to come back. You know what I mean? They get the rest. And they get the rest while the other teams are grinding, wearing themselves out, and they come in rested, and that's that much more advantage for them. So, you know, just like I said, it's good to watch. Watch it with my wife. She's into the NBA. We talk about it. We see the Spurs. Like I said, we adopted the hometown team, so it's good to see them, get back into form. And I hope that they continue it because I want to see the vibe. It's a good vibe around here, and I like it. My first time living in a NBA city, and it's a good vibe around here. I never experienced this before. I lived in the country from rural North Carolina, so I ain't never lived in area like this, like any area with any kind of professional sports team. So it's real good around here. So I like that. Really like that. Yes. But other than that, I thought we look forward to seeing my man today, but it's the industry, the truck driving industry can be a harsh industry, man. It's hard to make I'm saying it's hard to make plans when you're driving trucks. It's very hard because, you know, you have all the best intentions in the world, but you are at the mercy of the loaders and the unloaders. You are at the mercy of them. If you have some good loaders and unloaders, I mean, you have some fast loaders, you can get in and out. But if you have, no matter what the company is, the company don't determine like how fast or slow it goes. There have been, $1 billion companies where there are slow as hell out there, and there have been mom and pop places where you pick up and they have you done in 5 minutes and you up out of here. So it all depends on, the people, like the actual people that's loading and unloading your truck. So I think that he how he got with got there and they're real slow, have you there for hours at a time, and you have all intentions, but then next thing you know, you got to get another load and you got to go. So it's just the nature of the game, and that's the way it is. You have good intentions, but sometimes reality steps in and says something different, and you just got to run with it. That's that. I understand that completely because I done did that a few times. I made them want to see family members or who old friends, classmates, whoever wanted to see, you know people I went to school with, whatever, have all intentions to see them, but by the time you get there, go through the process of you know, getting to the place, getting back into it when you finally got to check in, then you have to, some places they might, you might have a door as soon as you get there. Some places they might put you in a staging area where you hit staging where they sit you, park you in a parking lot, or park you in an area where other trucks is, where you have to sit and wait for them to call you. Then they'll tell you, hey, look, you got your, we give you this door. So then you go to this door, you back in the door. Hopefully there's enough room for you to back. If there's not enough room, you got to make it. You got to make do something. Hopefully for the most part, they do. Other truck drivers help you out. So if you have to back through a tight area, other truckers might help guide you through and stuff. So there's a brotherhood out there where people help you out. But once you get to the door, you get back then. Hopefully they'll go. Hopefully they'll get to you right then. There've been times you back to the door and you still wait another hour for them to finally unload you. Then some people unload you like right then. They'll unload the truck, bam, 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 get everything off the truck, then that's done. Some people do it like that. Some of them they unload the truck, then they'll break everything down and count it and all that. Some places do that. So that takes a long time. Depends on what kind of load you got, what you got going on there. So, there's a lot of variables when it comes to that. It's not it's that's why when people, like, if you are associated with any kind of truck driver, or know a truck driver, whatever, if they say they come to your town, and if they say they are taking a break or they gonna be in town a few days, they taking like 40. I say they're doing a 34-hour reset or something like that. Then they're gonna be there for a minute. But if somebody's saying, "Look, I got a load here. After I drop this load, I might come see you." If before, like, they get there early and before, then that's one thing. But after, when they saying I'm gonna, go deliver this load, then they say I might better come see you afterwards. Yeah, that's like a 50-50. More, yeah, 50-50 chance they might get a chance to come see you because, whatever's going on. It depends on if they are getting a load right after, they or get, let's say, if they unload early in the day or sometime in the afternoon, or they getting a load at night, or if they getting a load tomorrow, they might have a few hours to come mess with, might have a few hours to spare. But if they getting a load that day, yeah, they might, because it takes a lot to move a vehicle, that truck, man, getting it in and out of places and stuff. trying to find somewhere to park. People have to come see. I mean, it's just a lot of things. So yeah, I understand. I understand. So, like I said, if he couldn't come because of he had to sit there a long time at the receiver. It took a long time. I totally understand. Hopefully they might. If he can't come this time, there'll be opportunity next time. So yeah, So yeah, we good. If you ain't if you somehow you can't come, it's all the love is still there, brother. It's all love, and you driving truck, so you might in the there's a good possibility you might be back soon. I'll be right here. Yeah. So it's done warmed up around too, man. Some of them come back. Shit. Oh my god. Remember I told you it was like a chilly? That seemed like a distant memory now. It's done heated up. It ain't like unbearable heat, like I said. It makes me sweat, but I sweat anyway. I sweat in the wintertime. So just one of those. It's hereditary. So like I said, it's just hot. But I learned how to, get around in it. Keep me a sweat rag, keep me a washcloth or a hand towel or something with me. So you have to learn how to adjust. And that's what I do. I ain't gonna sit there and complain and not remember, oh, God, I can't go out in the heat because just wipe my stuff off. And I have to, shirts and stuff like that. I got to wash my clothes. And eventually, I always have to, like, stuff that I wear frequently, like different, like plain t-shirts and all this stuff. And after a while, I have to change them because I keep, though I sweat and wash them and sweat and wash them. Eventually, you have to go because sweat. It just eventually you have to change them. It just happens. So yeah, but it's all good. It's all good. Like I said, it feels good. It's hot. It's sort of hot, a little bit warm, but yeah, it's rain. Like I said, it rained a lot last week, and it looked like it was gonna rain today, and and people like I said, I do a little bit, and yes, I get to do DoorDash, so I get to go around the neighborhoods and see people and talk to people and stuff like that. So people, I was like maybe like sometimes be older people, old ladies. This one lady, I dropped the order off at it looked like it was a hospital, like some sort of rehabilitation hospital clinic or whatever. So I was leaving out, and there was an old lady. It was an older white lady. She probably was about, like she probably about in her 70s or whatever. And she had two canes. She had a cane in each hand walking. And I was walked past her. So, and I got to the door, and she probably was about maybe like 100 feet, 150 feet from the door. So I just asked her, if there was other doors around, there was a hallway. So I asked her, I said, "Are you coming out here?" She's like, "Yeah." So when I sat there and held the door, it took about 30 seconds to walk into the door, and I was sitting here walking. And the whole time she was apologizing. "Oh, I'm sorry that I'm taking so long. I'm so slow." I'm like, "Look, it's okay." I'm like, "Relax." I said, "It's my pleasure to open the door for you." So, she walked through. I had to open another door for her to walk on out. And then she looked out, like, "Oh my God, I hope it don't rain. We got enough rain last week. My dad gonna wheeze out of control." And I was like, "Look, man, we need some damn rain. It's dry here." So, she's like, "It's okay. You feel good out here and stuff." And she, walking with a cane and stuff, still getting it. So I get a chance to see like get a chance to talk to older people and stuff. Not like old people. You learn always since I was younger, since I was little, always like old people. You learn a lot from talking to old people. Always. Even at my age, I learned a lot talking to people 70 and 80, 60, 70 and 80. So I always try to do that. Gain knowledge from people who have more knowledge than me. So yeah. And and sometimes because I still listen, I like a lot of music, but I like hip hop, still okay, of course I like hip hop. I'm real, I'm a hip hop. I'm not a hip hop head like I used to be, like in the 90s, 80s and 90s and like 2000s, sort of like I still listen to that. I still listen to that music. I still listen, from that time, I still listen to all of that. So I like that. I like plant. I like listen. I listen to some new things. I could get into some of it little bit, a little bit, but I'm not. I still listen to the '80s, 90s, and 2000s and stuff. And I don't know. My taste is, I like everything. I don't like, some. Sometimes it goes against what the popular thing is. Like, for instance, that whole. I prefer Ja Rule over the 50 Cent musically. This is just musically. I ain't talking about them as a person or whatever. I can separate the people from the work. I don't. I can do all that. So I prefer Ja Rule 50. You know, I like Kendrick Lamar. I respect him. But his thing, he has a few songs that I rock with, but I never been a Kendrick Lamar fan like that. Even when he first came out, I never But he has some songs that I bob my head to. But like I said, but I rock with Drake, his music and stuff like that. He's more versatile and stuff. Not than just did what it is. I like Pac. I think Pac is the most personally like the greatest as far as influence and music and everything to me. I think it's Pac. And like for a long time I was a Jay Z. I like Jay Z. I thought Jay Z was the greatest for a long time, the best because of I felt like the total package of him, what he did, his music, how he was able to, you know, sort of like cross over without crossing over. He did. Became like almost a pop rapper, but he didn't have a. He was a pop rapper who still had street sound. That makes sense. You know, like DMX. I love DMX. Love DMX. You know, I like old. I did like Kanye. You know, before he went crazy. I like early Kanye, his music, not his person. I never liked him as a person. I always thought he was an asshole as a person from the very beginning. I always thought Kanye was an asshole, and he still is to me. But he did make good music. I don't know what he up to now, but he did. I did like Weezy a little bit. It was you know I like Weezy. You know I don't know what you're talking about now. Some things you can't hear what you're talking about. He do got some crazy lyrics, like F is for phenomenal, stupid shit like that. So this, but he got some genius lyrics too. G's moving silence like lasagna. You know, he's. I like yeah, I like Ti. I like over that, and I know they don't Ti and Luda. I like Luda too, but I always felt like Luda. What the hell he be talking about? It's kind of like the purpose. Some things like what he be talking about. So Ti and Luda. I like Ti stuff a little bit more. I think Luda make it stuff is okay, but I'll rock with Ti. I did like the West Coast. I mess with Snoop. Um, mess with Dre a little bit. I did mess with. I used to mess with MC8 a little bit. I used to like MC Ren. I used to mess with MC Ren. You know, I didn't get with Too Short until later. Ice T a little bit. I was never a big exhibit. And I don't know why. I mean, he ain't a bad rapper, but I just never rock with exhibit like that, man. I just didn't. I just haven't. Um, you know, of course, I like. Let's see. Excuse me. I like Fat Joe. Um, you know, no. I'm sorry. No, Big Pun. Sorry, Big Pun, not Fat Joe. Oh my God. I ain't want to talk about that. There's the funny thing. Like I said, I be going in neighborhoods, like they be like nice neighborhoods. They be like retired neighborhoods or like retired people there. So I be people be out like playing and I be like I listen to my music, the time, you be riding, listen to your music, you be zoned out, listen to your music, just focus on your music. You see where you're trying to go, going through the neighborhoods and stuff. Don't be speeding and stuff and don't be blasting like loud. It don't be like first of all, I got a system like that. So I don't be blasting too loud. I know they can hear me. And I wasn't even paying attention one time, and I was playing the song between with Nori and Nas. Nas and no one. I like Nas. I always like Nas, you know. But I was playing the song by Nori and Nas, Body in the Trunk. And if you know hip hop, you know what song I'm talking about. And I was just playing that music, and I wasn't even paying attention. Man, I was in this neighborhood with these old white people playing "Body in the Trunk." Man, if you heard that song, imagine how they think me playing that. So, you know, so yeah, stuff like that. So that stuff I be experiencing. And talking about the Nas, I like Nas. I love. It used to be, he's a genius rapper and stuff like that. The only thing about Nas, I always felt like he was younger, he didn't have that problem. Sometimes with rappers, I think the sound of your voice matters. I think how you sound matters. And I felt like Nas, although he's a great rapper, genius as far as flow and how, the words and the metaphors and the similes and everything he does as far as with his music is flawless. So I feel like his voice puts you to sleep. He can't, I don't know, his voice don't bring energy. And sometimes you need that as far as with the song, man. Every song can't be just sit back, vibe, and bob your head. You got to be able to make that song that, get people on the dance floor sometimes or get people, yeah, get people excited and stuff. And I think sometimes his voice, you know, then even the song, I'm trying to think of a song that he done like that. There was a song he did with Genuine, Owe Me, Pay Me Now, whatever. Yeah, the song he did with Genuine. The song was real upbeat, but I felt like the song struggled a little bit because Nas, like it just he didn't bring that energy. He wasn't that type of rapper like that, man. He was just a vibe. Like it just, I don't know. I just felt like that part of him was is some, and then probably his production was subpar because he wasn't, man. He didn't put out the best albums all the time. So that but I still think as far as that, he's still a great rapper. He's still that's just my personal opinion. I just and as far as Big, I know Big is problem with Big is he don't his resume. He got as great as his impact was as far as the shortest period of time. He had one of the biggest impacts ever of any hip hop artist, because he I don't know. I remember when he came out, man. That was Big changed the game when he first came out. I remember that Ready to Die came out. First time I heard it, man, I was hooked. Very first time I heard the whole album. We didn't skip over anything. And but that short period of time he had, yeah, he was it. But, he just didn't have enough his resume. You know. I still listen to him a little bit now. His lyrics, we all know, everybody done heard, I done read it online. People, I done even said it too, man. Some of the songs got questionable lyrics now. Or you question some of the things that miss shit. I questioned some of the things when it came out, so I ain't gonna front. So he done said some crazy stuff, man. You know, talking about, yeah, we all know the one about the kids and stuff like that. And we already won't go through that one. And the one about you know, the song "Me and My Bitch," what he would do to the girl's father because the girl looked so good. I'm trying to think. There was one more. I think. Oh, when I think the song "Give Me the Loot" when he talking about robbing a pregnant woman and he got censored out. And that's what's so crazy is that Puffy. I'm always gonna call him Puffy. No Diddy, no whatever. Puffy. Whenever I remember reading about this an interview with him. He said whenever they were doing the song that when he was rapping "Give Me the Loot," that when he said that lyric, he didn't. He was so taken aback by the fact that he said that he would rob a pregnant woman that he just censored that word out. So there's no version of "Give Me the Loot." I don't think there's no version where that word he has pregnant up there. He censored that word out, even on the album, even on the explicit, even on the album with the explicit label, the regular album. He censored that word out. So it lets you know that's the one time where he showed like he had a little bit of morals. Yes, that was before the baby oil. I don't know, some. He censored that word out. So, you know, but yeah, that's about, big and everything. So I mean, some of the things I did love his music, but I always cut my some of the stuff he said, but you know, the man made One More Chance remix. Yeah, the man made what's the one? The man made Hypnotize. And I tell you another like a guilty pleasure. I know he's not the best rapper in the world, but my man Ant used to always, we used to laugh about, we used to talk about the lyrics, we used to recite the lyrics. They used to be Master P. All of them, Master P, Cash Money, all of them, Juvenile, yeah, BG, everything, man. We used to go around reciting BG lyrics on Bling Bling. Oh, we used to do that, man. We used to have him, it used to be me, and we used to have his son Trent saying it, man. We used to trip on that. So what he said, like, I be the player with the ice on me. If it costs less than 50, it don't look right on me. I used to walk around saying that all day. Used to walk around saying, Diamond won by everybody that's in my clique. Got the price of a mansion around my neck and wrist. But we used to laugh and stuff like that. Any little joking around and stuff. But yeah. Now I still listen to I still listen to hip hop. Still listen, like the older hip hop. Give you a little bit of what it's where to give you a little bit of nostalgia. Think about a time. Whenever things weren't less, things weren't less crooked. Yes, we had a president that received oral sex while he was president in the office by somebody other than his wife. Yes, that happened. But damn it, he didn't do what he didn't go. Oh, let me think about it. Let me think if I say something crazy. I don't say nothing. No, he didn't do what Trump did. He balanced the budget. He balanced the budget. He balanced the budget, and truth be told, a lot of us melanated folks, earned a lot of money under Bill Clinton. We talk about all this hip hop and all this, the bling bling era, no, was it bling? No, the bling bling came in 2000. That was on W. But all the the come up came when when it was the 90s, when it was under Clinton. I did. I know Clinton looked at it differently now, because of different time, different circumstances, things change. People, not looking at him in the same light they did, and that's understandable. Things, whatever. You know, and people, they give people, him like in Biden when he was, he was a senator then. Clinton was president. They give Clinton a hard time for that crime bill. I remember being in college. We used to talk about, he used to talk about how bad that 3 strikes rule was in California, where if you get 3 felonies, you go to, jail for life, 20 years or whatever. And that, the strikes could be whatever. You got 2 strikes and you get a little minor crime and you go to prison for 20 years for something, for if you're, stuff like that. So, and then, sending a lot of people to the prison unnecessarily for crimes where, and other times they would have received like a lesser sentence, But here's my thing. Here's my thing about the whole thing. I'm not saying I'm not saying the bill was right. I'm not saying it was right. Excuse me. Drop something. Excuse me. I'm not saying that the bill was right or wrong or whatever. All I'm saying was I remember the times. I'm pretty sure there are people, our people got a lot of people got locked up. They shouldn't have got a lot of longer than they should have, stuff like that. But I'm not one of the people that is going to be like, oh, it was all the government fault and it was all their fault and it was because I remember back then. I remember because I was in high school and in college around that time, and I remember what was going on then. And that's the time when we were, because we had, we had movies to bring it, talk about it. That's the time when we had the Manson Society and the Boys in the Hood. We had New Jack City. No, New Jack City came out earlier. Boys in the Hood came out. Was he the? No, didn't have Manson Society. And other movies like that. But we had like an epidemic of like drive-by shooting. That's when we were glorifying the crack culture as far as being out here in the street selling crack, you know, um, making that money, trying to, get yours, and who cares of how the effect, you know, who cares if it's killing our neighborhood? Who cares if it's affecting our children because they're being born to people who were addicted to that? So I don't forget all that. So yes, maybe the bill could have been written differently, but to say we didn't need something like that is being naive because we were, they were part of us. That we were out here tripping. We're out here shooting each other, killing each other, with guns and with the damn product they were giving to these people, man, destroying our neighborhoods and stuff, man. And that really, yes. And yes, I believe, yes. And the CIA, the government, yes, they did affect that. And they affected our neighborhoods with that. Because we didn't get that. Like I said, we don't own no poppy field. We don't own no poppy field. And Brown said, there's no Uzis in Harlem. No, nobody owns a poppy field. You know? So yeah, it's all crazy. But yeah, we have to take accountability for what we did to, do that. And like I said, we got to get out of the glorifying going to jail and getting out and stuff like that, man. We got to stop doing that, man. We got to stop, because going to jail ain't nothing good. Going to jail has destroyed us. Going to jail is just another. Going to jail for us has just been another form of slavery. Because what they do, you got to work for free or for pennies, you know. And that's what they did when they freed it. When they freed us, they put in a provision. When they freed it, when they made the amendment that was abolishing slavery, they made a damn little highlight. They, the when a person is free, except under the fact that they commit a crime or they are incarcerated or in stuff like that. So when they lock you up, they can pretty much do what they want to with So back when after we got free, they made laws against us, like congregating, having three or four people in an area was against the law, and they'll go to jail. If they didn't have a job, we would go to jail. If we looked at a white person wrong, we go to jail. They made all the crimes that were, made up all the crimes to get us in the prison system so they can have free labor again. So it was all, that's, and all this, like I said, all this stuff is facts. I'm not, spitting no, let's say, no innuendo or whatever. I'm not doing none of that. I'm just telling you what that stuff is proven facts. So, but yeah, damn, how do I get from damn? I'm just saying that's where it goes sometimes. How do I get from Bill Clinton? How do I get from Bill Clinton to the black codes? Oh, have mercy. What in the world? Hey, but that's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes the conversation just keeps going. Like I said, I'm in the down water with wrath, with wind, with the sails out here, you know, and just seeing where the wind takes me. Wherever we go, that's where we go at for the day, you know. Like I said, we'll be here every Monday through Friday, and occasionally on the weekends. You know. And before I go today, I'd like to give my condolences to my classmate. Um, I remember named Cornell Lazarus Moore. They lost he lost his father, him, his sister Cheryl. They lost their father. He was a good man. I remember. I ain't gonna lie, I haven't interacted with him like a whole lot in my life. I had a handful of times because I was his children's age, so I talked to his children a lot. But I like to he was a good man. But like I said, the thing I noticed, the thing that stood out to me, my personal, and I put on his page, I put on his comment on his page about it that thing that stood out to me, he kept his he had like a box. He had like a box, like a little afro box, a little shaped like a box. And the first thing he kept his lawn, his hedge bushes shaped just like his hair. And them things he's always keep his hair, he always kept it tight. He always kept his hedges tight, always clip edge all the time. That's everything I know about him. And I should tell Zara somebody. He used to laugh. I'm like, yeah, man. He always kept his hedges tight. That inspired me to learn how to do hedges because the way he kept them, you know. So yeah, that's what I remember about him. Like I say, I always been a nice man. Always, said hello, gave him respect. He always there was never had a bad interaction, anything, man. Just, he was a good father, raised good children, had married to his wife, just it was good family, good middle class African American family that were model. Was anybody perfect? Nobody perfect. But that was, something to look. It was a man to look up to. Raised his family, nice house. Raised good kids, well grounded. I remember Lazar's mom. His mother was a substitute teacher. Sometimes she used to come out there. Very nice woman, very nice family, man. Those very, I feel so, my condolences goes out to him and his family. All the way here from San Antonio, man. I feel you. I feel you lost, man. I love you. And I hope, y'all get through this. You're strong. Get through this, my brother. Everything will be okay. You still here. Enjoy the days you got here, man. And enjoy the family that we got. Like I tell it every day. And when we end this, like I said, if you want don't forget, if anybody new subscribers, new people watching, please hit like and subscribe because that's how we're gonna do every day. But like I say, end it now, like I end every day. Kiss your loved ones, man. Kiss your kids, kiss your loved ones, because you never know when it'll be the last day. Shout out, like I said, my condolences. Lazarus, hanging there, my man. Class 9-3, hanging there, my brother. You got it. You're a strong man. You the man in the household. You the man. You the rock. So you got this. I love you. Y'all have a good evening. I'll see y'all again tomorrow.